Have anything come up?
Did you turn the speaker back on? Did you turn the speaker?
February 7th meeting of Martin County Board of Education is called to order. All rise, please. Ms. Cargile is going to give the invitation, and Ms. Purvis will give the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's pray. Dear Father, we thank you that we all got here safely tonight, and we pray that we all get home safely. We thank you, Lord, for the opportunity to serve our girls and boys in Martin County schools. We ask blessings upon our teachers, our staff, our board members, our visitors, parents, Lord, and help us make the decisions that will be the best for our community. In Christ's name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
I'd like to get an approval of the agenda.
Thank you.
Moved and seconded to approve the agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Agenda is approved. Public comments.
At Mr. Chair's request, I will provide a summary of the standards for public comment. Number one, individuals will be given 3 minutes to make their presentations. Request to speak for a group will be granted 5 minutes to address the board. Number two, individuals or groups will be called on to speak in the order on the sign-up sheet. Number three, if an individual is not present or declines to speak, the next person on the sign-up sheet will be called upon. Number four, if the 20-minute period ends during a speaker's presentation, the public comment period will end at the conclusion of the time allotted to the presenter. Number five, any materials that the individual or group wishes to present to the board should be submitted prior to the meeting so they can be distributed. Number six, the board will not respond to comments except to request clarification of points made by the presenter. Number seven, the superintendent will provide a written response for questions posed to the board within 10 working days of the meeting. And number eight, the board will not hear public comments related to personnel issues or student issues that are under investigation by the administration.
Thank you, Ms. Purvis. First person, Dawn Richin. If I messed up your last name,
That's
forgive
right.
me.
You said it perfectly, thank you. Good evening. My name is Dawn Richin, and I am the current PTA president for E.J. Hayes Elementary. Today, I'm advocating to make masks optional for Martin County schools. We are all here tonight for one common goal, for the betterment of our children. This is why I volunteer in our schools. And if a policy is in place to keep children safe and it's not working, then it's time to revisit that policy. The mask policy is causing physical and anxiety issues for my child. She suffers with headaches on a daily basis when at school and otherwise not. I have even talked to her about a medical exemption, but she has chosen not being bullied over breathing because she doesn't want to be picked on. She checks on the weather nightly to see if she will have a mask break the next day. And just as coincident today, she did not get a mask break. Most recently, I found out that she even has to wear a mask in gym class, which the WHO does not recommend because it makes it harder to breathe. It promotes growth of microorganisms on the masks when they get wet, and masks in the gym need to stop immediately. Children have suffered the most during the last 2 years with lockdowns, virtual learning, and now having to have their breathing restricted on a daily basis. We need to reverse course and get back to what we're here to do, and that is to teach our children. Children can't learn if they can't communicate properly with teachers. Policy is causing unnecessary stress loads to our teachers, and we need them to teach, not police. We need to get back to the basics and deal with this virus as we have dealt with other issues, health issues in the past. We are now 2 years into this pandemic, and we know now that children are the least likely to suffer symptoms if they do get COVID. By no fault or lack of trying, masks are not being worn as they should. A recent school project of athletes reading to the younger children showed that 59% of the children were not wearing their masks correctly. and the pictures are attached, and I circled the faces of all, and I counted only the ones that faces I could see. Students are being exposed daily at lunch, and let's not forget about the sanitary issues of their mask being on their face with germs on it and hoping that they have a clean mask for the next day. I have put my trust in the administrators, teachers, and board members to make the best decisions for my child on a daily basis, which has always caused me stress. I have one child. And when I recently saw a board meeting that showed one of your members that was in favor of masks not wearing one, and the mask was continuously off, and I have a hard time with you making a decision for my child to wear one for 7 hours a day. That as a parent makes me very frustrated. When do we say that the risks are greater than the benefit of having a mask on just to say we have a mask on? Well, any mask is better than none, they say. I have to disagree. Last fall, I volunteered at Hayes for a social. For 2 hours, I had to wear a mask. I went home physically sick. Neighboring Beaufort County has an optional mask policy with 6,400 students compared to our 2,900. Why can't we do that? When do we say enough is enough? And I'm asking as a mother of a child who is suffering from your policy to make this stop and make it optional. If parents want to have their children to have one on, then make it optional for them. My child is suffering from the board's decision of making this a mandatory policy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Marquisha Armstrong.
Hello. I am speaking on behalf of the parents and special needs of second grade teacher assistants. Students have so many different learning styles and work at different pace. The standards for learning have been raised. Our children need hands-on assistance to help them reach their full potential. Some children need one-on-one assistance all day. The teachers have to address so many different disruptive behaviors. Every child does not have supportive parents at home for whatever reason may be. Teachers are juggling all day. There are so many things that can interrupt the teacher during the day, such as internet running slow, printer breaking down, a child needs someone to talk to, a child needs some extra tender love and care, or addressing concerns with parents, just to name a few. Please consider the needs of the teacher assistants. I do have a child that is in second grade that does not have a teacher assistant, and she's not working to the full potential that I know she can. I do have to come out of pocket a lot more at home with hiring tutors to help her when I feel like, she shouldn't have to if she receives a free education at school. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nikki Andrews.
I am here also to speak about the mask policy, and Dawn did it so eloquently. I would like to add in a couple of other things. I have been in South Florida for the last 20 years, and I have recently moved back to Eastern North Carolina and been here about a year. My children were both here in school. My 13-year-old had the option to move to Missouri with her dad where there is no mask policy, and she did it. She's not used to wearing one. It was causing anxiety, just like she was saying. And I also would like to point out that every single one of you have a drink in front of you. Everybody takes their mask down. So are we saying that this is not going to affect us when you take it off and you're eating and drinking and you're in an open room? Everybody touched the door handle when they came in. Everybody's touched their mask. That is contamination. I learned that in my first semester of nursing school. Masks do not work. I have not worn one in 2 years. They are now saying that natural immunity has a 27 times more effective rate of keeping anyone from getting COVID and spreading it to the others. I would like to call for an end to the mask mandates and make it optional as well, because if it does make you feel better, absolutely, please wear it. But when you are standing here and you come up here and you take this mask down and you take that mask off and you take a sip of your drink, you've touched that door, you've touched everything else that everybody's touched. are putting those germs back on your face. So I would like to say, please, let's end this mask mandate for our children. It is definitely causing them stress and anxiety. 70% of body language is the communication that we read. Children are in school to not only learn, but to socialize. And that has hindered them, hence causing that anxiety. And that is what I would like to see happen here in Martin County. It is an optional in other counties nearby. It's never been a thing in Florida. That is what we came from. My children have not adapted well, and I would like to see it end. Thank you.
Thank you. Pamela Sherrod.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good evening. I'm coming for the teacher assistants. I stand before you yet again. I came a couple months ago and I'm advocating for our days back, getting our 40 hours back. We need our time. We need our days. I am a struggling parent, single parent, to a second grader in your county. I can't make ends meet working a full-time job, working 2 jobs for Martin County. I drive the bus also. I just got my paycheck just the other week, and I got $519 from my full-time job that I work every day of the week, 5 days a week. I can't make ends meet like that. I drive the bus. I get up. It's 25 degrees in the morning. I get my 7-year-old up because I don't have any other way to get her to school. I have to take her with me on that 25-degree bus, and it's cold up there. I have her wrapped up in 2 blankets, two throws to make sure she's not freezing up there because I have to work 2 jobs to take care of her. It's not fair that I have to struggle and I work full time every day. I don't like that. I don't want to do that. I don't want to struggle all my life. I don't want to do that. We need our days back. I calculated on just how much I could make if I just stayed in the classroom and not drove your bus. I would make the same amount if I stayed in the classroom than I made with driving the bus and in the classroom. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to struggle anymore. I want to stay in Martin County because I love working for Wilson Primary School. I love the kids. I love the atmosphere. But I can't do this anymore. This is too much on me as a single parent. I have to struggle every day to take care of my little girl, whether I'm going to be able to pay bills or not. And it's not fair when I work hard for you guys, for you. I shouldn't do that. I should be able to make ends meet, and I can't. I'm on public assistance, working 2 jobs, and it's not fair. We need our time back. Please, I'm begging, give us our days back. Let us work our days. Give us our 40 hours back. Let me come back and make my time up in the evening from my bus. I lose 6 hours a week from 35 hours that I get because I go drive the bus. And I can't make it back up. That's not fair to me. It's not fair to my child. She's suffering just as well as I am. And it's not fair. Please give us our days back. That's all we want. Give us our time. Give us 40 hours. We're worth that. I'm telling you, we're worth that. I work hard. I do my job and probably 3 or 4 more other people's job at Winter Primary. I cover lunch for at least an hour and a half because we're short-staffed on teacher assistants. It's not fair. That's all I ask for is our days and our time back. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next item on is the consent agenda. We have 2 field trip requests that have been added since the board packet came out. One is Riverside softball. They have a ball game at Manio, and they're requesting to stay overnight. And the other is Riverside track. And let's see. they are also asking for an overnight to go to a track meet in, I think it's Winston-Salem. So can we get a motion to approve the consent agenda with those two items added? Got a motion to approve
Second.
and a second. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Consent agenda passes. Thank you. Ms. Madison. All right, moving on to the information items.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and board members, and I believe you already have your, some handouts I passed out. Last time we talked, January 10th, I was telling everybody about, about a month into this Omicron wave we've been all experiencing. And I said that was called what we call an epidemiology ice pick curve. And the first picture you see on that graph page, in red is the ice pick shape. We saw a big, drop around the 18th, United States cases. We were hoping that as quickly as these cases rose, we'd see as quick a decrease. And that seems to be what happened, thankfully. So over the last 2 weeks, we've definitely seen that number nationwide start to go down, just as sharply as it went up. Cases in North Carolina are starting to decrease. We peaked again around the 18th of this month. We've been going down steadily ever since. If you flip that page over to the back, new cases this week from last week fell about 46% in North Carolina. Deaths are rising slightly, about 4% over the last week. So what happens usually, hospitalizations continue to rise about 10 to 15 days even after cases peak. And then after that, even a couple of weeks after that's when you still start to see those deaths increase until they start to finally drop off. That's because people, tend to go to the hospital, the ICU, and then fortunately we do have some deaths associated with it. So deaths will continue to probably increase and then drop off starting probably next week. Cases in Martin County, again, we started seeing this Omicron wave start about December 15th. So I just kind of looked at our numbers December 1st through today. So back in December 1st, we had about 3,847 cases in Martin County. Total cases as of today, 5,970. So over the last just 2 months, we've had 2,123 cases. And that's all related to this Omicron wave. It's about 55% increase in cases just over the last 2 months from what we've had this entire pandemic. Total deaths as of December was 77. Deaths as of today, total 84. So we've had 7 deaths associated with this Omicron wave. In comparison, that Delta wave, and you can see that on that flip around to that first page, that's the one, started in July, around July 4th, and it went all the way to the end of October. So that was that Delta wave. That was a 4-month wave. So over Delta, we saw an increase of about 1,362 cases over that 4-month period. Deaths, we had 28 deaths in that 4-month period. So in summary, Delta cases back, early this summer, a 4-month wave. When we're looking at total cases, all the cases we've had, 5,970 cases. Delta represented about 23% of those, and it represented about 33% of all of our deaths in Martin County. Omicron is a way of looking at 36% of total cases were just in the last 2 months. This entire pandemic, 2 years, 36% of cases were over the last 2 months with this Omicron wave. Fortunately, only 8% of our deaths so far, this entire pandemic, were associated with this Omicron wave. So again, like you've been seeing, this is a really infectious version of COVID-19, but it's less impactful on severe illness, hospitalization, and death. We're seeing a lot less death associated with it. We are seeing some because of the vast number of cases we've been seeing. It's going to happen, but we're just not seeing it like we did in the first few waves. Several reasons for that. It's a little less potent, a little less, it doesn't cause that severe illness. Also, unlike what we had in the beginning of this pandemic, we have vaccinations now. We have successful monoclonal antibodies. They're getting retooled to deal with the Omicron variant. We have 2 antiviral pills, very short supply now, but still we have some type of actual treatment if you do get it. And again, natural immunity. There are people, unfortunately, you see with this ice pick, it spreads vastly throughout the unvaccinated community. We have a lot of breakthrough cases associated with it as well, but it has burned through basically the population has infected all it can infect, and then it drops down really sharply. So those are three things that are working with us on this, that hopefully we can move past what we've had the last 2 years and this, what we call the pandemic, and move into this endemic phase where we deal with it like we do with flu every year, either with a booster every year to 2 years based on what variants are out there. And so I've written a letter, the health directors in the northeastern part of the state wrote a letter to the Department of Health and Human Services Secretary last week, urging them to make that shift sooner rather than later, so we can stop doing the daily case counts, case investigations, percent positives. Because right now those numbers, we provide them every day, but with the amount of home testing and all that's coming along, those numbers, we can't ensure complete accuracy that all the tests that are being done are being recorded. And so we're making sure that we shift over to that sooner rather than later, and we'll hopefully get the state to encourage the CDC to make those recommendations for those guidelines for isolation and quarantine. Today, since last Friday, we've added 34 new cases in Martin County. Current active cases, 100. We're at 84 deaths. Our testing numbers, we still have both testing sites in Williamston, Monday through Thursday at Scout Hut, 10 to 4, and then Robertsville at Easton Elementary, Tuesday through Saturday, 10 to 3. Those sites, about 2 weeks ago, we were seeing well over about 1,100 people a week. Last week, it dropped down to about 800 people, so this week it's going down probably to about 600. We'll find out tomorrow exactly. We're seeing a big decrease in the amount of people getting tested. Again, that follows around with the same decrease we've seen in active cases. Less affected, less people having to go get tested, less people get sick, have to go get tested. We're still testing that baseline amount of people to get tested every week for their jobs or for other reasons, but we're seeing a lot less people come in because they were exposed. Currently in Martin County, we've got 3 active outbreaks, Carrollton and Williamston, 4 staff members there, 11 residents. Vintage Inn, 4 staff members, 1 resident, and then Williamston House, 6 staff, 26 residents, and those numbers will be updated every Tuesday, so we'll see an update tomorrow in those numbers. In Martin County, we're still around 53% have at least had 1 dose of the vaccine, 49% have had a second dose. We've added in the booster doses for the county, so 4,429 people have gotten a booster dose. So if you look at how many people have had a second dose and then a booster, about 41% of people that have come back in Martin County to get that booster. So that's a little bit less than we see in Terrell County and Washington County, but we are still seeing people come back in to get that booster. We are seeing a lot of people come to get the pediatric doses, the 5 to 18 Pfizer shot, and then people coming in to get their first dose. We've seen a lot of that in the last few weeks associated with Omicron. But overall, great news. We've seen a big decrease in cases, extremely positive, and hopefully with this shift endemic, what we're talking about with masks and everything like that, hopefully the rules will be lessened for quarantine and isolation, so we can get to that period where we can recommend no mask or mask option. And with that, if you haven't answered any questions y'all might have.
You may have said, and I missed it, what do you recommend right now as of this time for us to do?
Well, we talked with the state last week about what we should recommend, especially the school boards, and they are still sticking until the CDC says to change on isolation. We still recommend mandatory masking for a lot of different reasons. The biggest reason is if the school has the mandatory mask policy, it allows children to stay in school if they were exposed rather than go home for a 5-day quarantine. It keeps more people in class.
Do you think us being able to test in our schools is helping the situation?
Absolutely. Yeah, you can do it right there in the school instead of having to go sit at the site. Less time out of class to do that. Parents don't have to go pick them up and take them there. So it's a lot more convenient for parents, for students, and it allows that stay in school testing option if you do it, say, the day or 5 days after. It's really, really convenient for those children.
Thank you.
Mr. Gray, is it a targeted number that we are ideally looking at before we can?
Sure. And you remember, it was about probably 4 or 5 months ago, we were talking about if we can recommend that optional policy, and it was, looking at percent positive county and how many cases. So we look at the counties based on the color system. Right now, every single county in the state is still red. And so like Beaufort County made the decision to go optional, even though they wasn't recommended. So we're still seeing a few counties have done that. We hope that they change some of these metrics because percent positive, we don't really believe so. A really, really accurate number because of the with us as well.
I didn't mean to deviate from your question. I'm just taking the opportunity to
that's
tap
fine.
out the microphone to
But it
say
seems
kudos.
like a lot going on now.
Sure,
that involve
absolutely.
Our students and
Which is great. Because just today, I was updating Chairman Keys on two major grants that are in the works between Martin Community College, and one is NCA&T, and the other one is NC State, I believe.
well, that sounds very exciting.
We're excited. I mean, my email to Chairman Keys was great for the future of Martin County schools.
And I
Because
want to
of the
know more
partnership.
about it.
Sure,
so
absolutely.
Keep up with it.
Yeah, one is in agriculture, which you may have mentioned it here earlier today. Plus, we have the one that goes back to teaching also, which we're still waiting on all the agreements. And then the one that I sent earlier, which was employability. We're excited.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Well, I do want to report that every high school student goes to Martin Community College for free. And whatever that Martin Community College doesn't do, the foundation does it. So I do want to make that known, and we thank you for providing us the opportunity to come even give an update on Martin Community College.
Is that for next school year too?
Yes,
One?
yes, because due to
You talking about
hurricane.
from now? You talking about from now?
From now, as far as I know, that's what has been reported in our meetings. And the foundation is here, so.
And most of that, they had the long leaf grant. It was a 2-year program, and then the legislature renewed it for 2 more years, so you're already 4 years out.
Okay.
And anybody that fell through the crack, whether they were in the 2-year or the 1 year, like the Lions programs, certificates, diplomas, and that sort of thing. If there was a failure somewhere, then we have been picking it up so that they don't have to pay.
Wonderful. I just assumed after COVID went down it would go away. So this is good news. Thank you.
You're welcome. Y'all have a good night.
Thank you, Ms. Easley. All right, next item is Emergency Leave Act. Ms. Boyd?
Good evening. This is the third time that we've discussed this particular act, so I'm just going to give you a little background to remind you. When COVID occurred, the Families First Coronavirus Response Act was initiated in April 1, 2020, and it ran through December 31st of 2020. And that act required certain employers, which included us, to provide our employees with paid sick leave, not their sick leave they already earn, but this is in addition to that, or expanded family and medical leave for specific reasons that were related to COVID. And it provided up to 80 hours of paid sick leave for the employee to use, or 80 hours that could be used to stay home and care for a sick dependent that was related to COVID, or if there was a school closure or daycare closure and their child was at home for that reason. In that instance, it paid 2/3 of their daily rate of pay. That ended in December 31st of 2020. Our board graciously has continued to provide that 80 hours of emergency sick leave to our employees for COVID-related absences since that time. And we are very appreciative of that and keeping our staff able to continue to do what they needed to do as far as taking care of children and themselves. But now it's time for us to visit that again. And we've been very lucky that Martin County Schools has worked with our county health department, and they've been very diligent in working with us to also verify for our employees if they had COVID, then they provide us a note for them and they take emergency sick leave. Not emergency sick leave, excuse me. They take contagious disease leave. That's an allowable leave code by the state, and it does not go against their sick leave. So our employees continue to be covered by contagious disease leave if they have been tested, not the home test, but another test, and they have COVID, and the health department provides that note. Those who have to stay home with children or don't necessarily have documentation, because they used a home test, have been allowed to use the emergency leave. And the rate of repeat users for the emergency sick leave is more than 60%. So we have a lot of repeat users for emergency sick leave. So from this point forward, when you voted before, you voted for it to be in effect until the end of February. So the question is now, from the end of February forward, do you want to continue to provide that emergency sick leave? Or do you want to go back to, we continue to use the contagious disease leave that is covered by the state that we're working with the health department with for employees, and then at other times employees would have to use their sick leave?
So what are you really, we got two options here.
You can either continue to use the emergency, allow for them to use emergency sick leave and support that 80 hours, or not to continue that.
So what's the contagious one in the state?
The contagious, that is through the state, and so as long as the health department provides a note that verifies that that person had to isolate due to COVID or quarantine due to COVID, then they are covered and they don't have to use their own personal sick leave.
Do they get 80% of the salary?
No, they get 100% of their salary.
So is there a cost to the school for contagious health? I mean, contagious leave?
Well, that depends on where that person is paid from. So, and what that person is. If it's a teacher assistant, the state does not provide sick leave for teacher assistants. So that's covered out of the local budget. If okay, let me back up. It's not that they don't provide sick leave. Our teacher assistants have sick leave. However, you can't pay for their leave out of the state budget if they have to have a sub. If they have to have a sub, which some of our teacher assistants do, then that sub has to be covered out of local funding. So it depends. Sometimes there is a cost, a local cost for us. If they're paid out of state funds and it's a teacher, then there is sick leave money available in state funds to cover that.
Under the contagious.
Yes, ma'am.
So TAs don't cover, are not covered under state funds. Those that local.
If they have to have a sub, the TA gets their sick leave and they're paid. But if they have to have a sub, we have to pay for that substitute out of local funding. So that's a cost to us.
Only the sub pay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So what's the difference between our emergency, is sick leave and contagious?
Well, the benefit for the emergency sick leave that the board has continued to provide really has been for being able to provide care for children when they're out. Because the contagious disease leave only covers for the employee. It doesn't cover for them to be out with any other family member or a child. I don't know if it makes a difference to the board, but the surrounding counties around us are not continuing to provide emergency leave for their employees. Employees have to use either they're eligible for contagious disease leave or they have to use their own sick leave.
So if a staff member gets COVID and has to be out, they can use the contagious sick leave.
They can use the contagious disease leave as long as they have a verifiable COVID test that says they're positive, or they're having to quarantine based on CDC guidelines, and we have to have a note from the health department for that. And we have not had any issue getting our notes from the health department. Our school nurses work directly with the health department, and we've not had any problem covering those people.
And what percentage did our staff are using as?
Well, I have a percentage of how many are repeat users of the emergency leave. And that's 60% are repeat users. The amount of people who are actually using emergency leave is much lower than it has been in the past, part of that has to do with the changes in the quarantine and isolation period. It also has to do with if our employees have had their vaccine, even if they've been exposed at school, they don't necessarily have to quarantine. They can continue to work if they've had the booster.
So my interpretation of this is that 60% of those people that are receivers, is that what you're saying?
Yes,
Are
ma'am.
taking advantage of the system?
I'm not going to say they're taking advantage of the system, but I will say that they're not usually employees who have received their vaccines. And because of that, it increases the amount of times that they have to quarantine, or their children have to quarantine. Any other questions about this leave?
So the emergency sick leave doesn't cost us anything, whereas the emergency does.
Can you say that again?
I might have said it wrong. Does the contagion sick leave, one provided by the state, that doesn't cost us locally, right?
It's still the same premise. The state doesn't give us an extra pot of money for contagious disease leave. It's still the same premise. If it's a person that's paid out of local funds, then if they have to have a substitute, then we're going to have to pay out of local funds for that substitute. If it's a teacher assistant that requires a substitute, even if they're paid out of state funding, we would have to use local funds to provide their substitute because the state does not give us a pot of money for paying our
Teachers, what percent of our teachers are state teachers?
The majority of them.
That's what I thought.
Yes.
So that wouldn't cost us anything.
Correct. Well, it costs out the sick leave fund balance in that state budget, but it does not cost our local budget.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yes, that's correct.
All right, any other questions on the emergency sick leave? All right, then, we can move right on into small county, low wealth county sign-on bonus.
Okay. This bonus was included in Session Law 2021-180, Section 7A.5. And it is a sign-on bonus that is available for teachers who sign on in counties that receive small and low wealth county funding, which we do. So we do have teachers that are eligible. They had to have joined Martin County Schools after July 1, 2021, and they had to have been employed as of October 1st, 2021. It is a dollar for dollar matching fund. So the state will put in up to $1,000, and then we have to match whatever they put in. So it's the board's discretion as to A, whether or not you want to do the sign-on bonus at all, and if you do, what the amount is. We cannot use any kind of federal funding to supply or to do our part of the budget of the bonus. It would have to come out of our local funds in order to cover that. But they will do up to $1,000 per employee. So that would mean if you chose to do the $1,000 that the state does, then we would have to put in $1,000, and that would be a $2,000 bonus for a new teacher that signed on with us.
So that the 1,000 comes from what fund?
That would have, our part would have to come from local funding. We're not allowed to take it from any federal funding, including ESSER budgets.
That's including fund balance also.
Well, we have local funds that are set aside every year in our budget for spending. Now, I'm not going to tell you that this was in that budget. It was not, because we didn't know that this was going to come about. But that's where we would have to pull our funding from.
Question.
Yes.
What are some of the other amounts that other local districts are doing?
A couple of local districts are doing the $1,000 from the state, matching that and having the $2,000 bonus. One district is doing $500 from the state, $500 from their local budget for a $1,000 bonus. And then some have not made that decision yet, but this does have to, we have to, send in what we plan to do by February the 14th. So some people are still making decisions about this.
So how many teachers have we hired since July 1?
We have 29 teachers that would qualify for this bonus. So if you looked at doing 500 and 500, that would cost us $14,500. And if the board looked at doing 1,000 and 1,000, that would cost us $29,000.
And they already working.
Yes, sir, they're already working.
I thought it was trying to get new ones to come in. To get,
I will say that one advantage of this sign-on bonus, and remember that our state, they decided on our state budget not when they should have decided on our state budget. They were very late in making decisions. So this probably was in place and intended to be earlier to enable us to do a little bit of recruiting. However, they didn't make their decisions until November, so that's put us behind the 8 ball. But if you receive this sign-on bonus, you can't receive it in another county. You wouldn't be eligible until 2024. So there is some hope of retaining people. They wouldn't just be able to leave to go get this bonus.
Is this return
No,
just for this year?
just for this year.
I mean, what's the purpose of just making it 1 year? I mean, I know you don't have the answer, but it's just my thought.
And for it to be retroactive.
Again, that's the board's decision, and you have the choice of we do not have to participate, or if you choose to participate, you set the amount.
Any other questions on this subject? All right, then.
Yes, I have one. Is there a recommendation?
Well, if
I don't mean to put you on the spot. You can say yes or no.
if you were a new teacher and you came and you signed on to our county, we don't have any sign-on bonus, and many counties do have a sign-on bonus. Would it be a good faith effort on the board to participate? Yes, I believe it would be.
Anything else? All righty, then we'll move on into school mental health personnel support report.
Okay. This is a yearly report that's required to be presented to the board before February the 15th. And I am presenting on behalf of our superintendent, and it's a report on our school mental health people that are in place. And what the premise behind this report is, we shouldn't be decreasing in these areas, we should be increasing, because a lot of funding has been put in place to provide more services in the mental health area. Now, I say that, and we do have some funding to continue this, but it's not always easy to find people who want to come work for the school system when they can work for other industries and private practices that make a whole lot more money. However, we currently have 2 school psychologists on staff. There's no change there. We have 7.3 school nurses, so we have some nurses that are in part-time positions, and we have increased by 1.3 nurses. We have 8 school counselors. We don't have any change in that area. And we have 5 school social workers, and we have increased by 1 in that area.
So are we at the level of each employment meeting our needs? Community board.
Well, we have school counselors that are split between schools. So we are currently looking for additional counselors so that we could have full-time counselors in some of our positions. There are some schools that can do better with a split, but we have a couple of elementary schools that have higher needs that we would like to see a full-time counselor back in place. School nurse work seems to increase on a daily basis, and last week, when we saw that last presentation, I was sitting there thinking, oh my goodness, is this something our school nurses have the time to take on in their schedule with everything else that they're already currently doing with the telemedicine. And especially during peak times of COVID, we've certainly needed more people in place than we've had. School psychologists, we've been trying to add another school psychologist to our staff for many years, and that we're very fortunate to have two. I don't take that for granted, but we have one that's getting ready to retire soon, and I'm very concerned about the workload that's left for the other one if we're not able to find somebody.
We have telemedicine.
No, ma'am, but you did see a presentation about telemedicine, and part of that would be the school nurse's responsibility to be part of that meeting that they have. If you were to take that on. No, you haven't, but I was just thinking at that time, I don't know if they can take on another responsibility. Any other questions?
Thank you, Ms. Bowles.
Thank you.
Ms. Wagner, school calendar.
Good evening. In the packet, there's this sheet that's on the screen. You have this provided to you in the packet. At your chair, you have a copy of the original calendar, and then you have a copy of a draft of what these changes would look like on this sheet here. So, on the sheet right here, basically, it related to the changes in our calendar that took place this recently with January. We were out on January 21st for snow, and our students missed 6 hours of school that day. We were out on January 24th due to snow, and we missed 6 hours of students' time instruction. And then we were out on the 25th for a 2-hour delay, okay, on that. If you remember in calendars, students are required to make up or at least have 1,025 hours of instruction. We're well above that. The sheet that I have here that shows when we started, we were almost 8 days above the required time. When you look at this, what we looked at doing, I'm going to show it here, and you can look at it on your calendars. The reason I'm just showing you here in a larger form of January, February, and March is because where everything has kind of worked into that area. January 21st became a no day for on where February 28th would have been. February 28th on our calendar was a no day, and we switched the 2 days there. Then March 28th was a no day on the regional calendar. On the original calendar, March 28th was a no day. We switched that with January 24th. March 29th on the original calendar was an optional work day and a remote day for students. And we have moved that day to the 28th of March. So by doing this, the 6 hours that you lost on the 21st of January would be made up, and your staff working hours would also be made up on that. And on the January 24th, those 6 hours would be made up on the 29th there. At this time, as far as the students are concerned, the 2 hours for the makeup time, we're not recommending worrying about those 2 hours of the makeup time. Again, with this in place, and one day that we did do in the calendar in November, we are still 43.41 hours over the 1,025, which is 7.2 days over what's required by our students. So this is the proposed makeup that we have for our calendar at this time.
So we come out even, Steve.
Yes, ma'am, except for 2 hours, which would for a day that we did a late start.
I sure didn't think about those 2 hours being taken away from us, hour-wise.
Well, I mean, when the state's looking at instruction, they look at we account every hour as far as the students are concerned. And with that, we look at every hour. But when we develop our calendar, we always keep that in mind and have excess time in place. And for that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I move the Morgan County Board of Education into closed session, subject to advice from the attorney pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11A1 and A6 to prevent the disclosure of confidential personnel information under General Statute 115C-319 and to consider matters related to the initial employment of an individual employee. The board will go into closed session pursuant to General Statute 143-318.11A3 to consult with the board's attorney in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege, to consider confidential student matters as provided in North Carolina General Statute 143.318.11A1 and the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act 20 U.S.C. 1232G and North Carolina General Statute 115C-402.
All right, we got a motion to go into closed session, second. Moved and seconded, all in favor say aye. Aye. Closed session's granted. Approved personnel. Second, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. All right, personnel passes. The January 10th closed session minutes.
Make a motion that we, put our name on, that we, keep it closed.
Approve and keep put to the
Keep it closed for our staff are gonna keep it closed for confidential reasons.
All right, motion. Second, all in favor say aye. Opposed, nay. All right, the closed minutes. Session minutes are, as required by our state legislature, we have to vote on our monthly mask option.
I make a recommendation, we stick with the mask mandate.
All right, we have a motion to maintain the mask mandate, and it is seconded. All in favor? Let's have hands this time. 5, 4.
5.
Okay, and against? 2 against. So. Is that right? Did I miss a hand? Okay. All right. Emergency Leave Act. Let's see, the options. The emergency leave, contagious leave, or just regular sick leave.
I make a motion that we go with the contagion, I don't know if I'm saying it right, contagion sick leave.
contagious.
That the state provides at this point in time.
Second.
Got a motion to approve the contagious sick leave. All in favor, raise your hand. That's all 5 hands up. Yeah, all opposed? I'm gonna go with 4, so 6-1 for contagious. All right, Mr. Wagner presented revisions to the school calendar. Motion. Second, move to approve the revised 2021-2022 school calendar. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. All right, and the last item, the small county, low wealth county sign-on bonus. Do we want to do that, and what amount, if so?
Move to approve the $500.
All right, we've got a motion and second to do the small county, low wealth county sign-on bonus at $500. All in favor, raise your hand.
So we can match it at state.
Yes, ma'am.
But it's retroactive, remember.
All right, let's do this again. All in favor, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 2. And opposed? Okay, 6-1. All right. It's after 9 o'clock. Is there anybody that absolutely has some comments they want to make tonight? Ms.
I
Madison.
just have one. We've been addressed 3 or 4 times now with TAs and their days. When are we gonna decide on and discuss the TAs and they're giving them their days back?
We will be starting to discuss this next year's budget, next month? Yeah, in March.
So that, just for clarity, we can't do anything now. We have to wait and implement it on next year's school.
Well, keep in mind that it's going and the clerks have presented to you an explanation of the days at the last meeting.
But they just presented it. We didn't discuss it anymore.
We did not. And so it's not budgeted. I mean, we are, same as the conversation has not changed. We are following the $13 an hour, now, $15 for July 1. Then, I think Karen mentioned 10 different budget sources. So it's a little bit more of an in-depth explanation from Karen if we need to do it again. But our budget season is coming up soon.
So I think and I think this is what I want, and I'm trying to figure out if this is what Ms. Massey said. Let's go back to the TAs now. We did not have a full count of TAs presented to us, and I asked that we bring back the number. So when are we gonna discuss that, and how much more will it cost the students? And not to wait until we get the budget meeting, but have some real conversation about how we can do this and what we can't do, and give some idea of how we can give, it's not all days, but some days. That's a discussion that I want to hear also before March in our budget meeting.
So when the board makes a request for any type of report or something, we receive that request and then we start working on it. So I can't tell you right now where we are with the report. I can tell you that we hear the request, we'll start working on it. If there are additional requests after that, then something gets put on hold, or we put it at the top of the pile, whatever it is that is the pleasure of the board. My way of saying, I don't have an answer right now on when we will have that report for you right now.
So, Mr. Chair, can we have a conversation about how we can make this happen and how we can before we get into that March budget meeting where we only talk about this or whether we approve this or not?
We've only got 1 month before we start working on next year's budget. That's not much time.
I know, but we can have conversations so we can understand how we can make this happen and give us some ideas about, our next move, because if March is coming in and we're gonna just sit down and talk about the budget. I mean, we have not spent any conversation on the TAs of what they're requesting and for the finance and personnel to bring to us.
Ms. Bowen did discuss the money it would cost.
Ma'am?
Ms. Bowen did discuss the money it would cost.
She did not have all the TAs, she just has certain, some numbers.
Right, but I wrote it down what the numbers were, if it was this amount of days or that amount of days, right, Ms. Bowen?
But that was for
8 TAs and we have more than 8 TAs.
Actually, the information that.
So we're back in session, so we need to start.
I was surprised how expensive it was.
So the information, the financial information was presented by Ms. Rogerson. If you remember, she had a separate sheet for that.
Oh, wasn't her?
She
Okay.
gave you a breakdown of if you added this number of days back, this would be what the cost was.
Yeah.
And so she did include all TAs. Anybody who was paid as a TA in the county was included in those figures that were given at our last meeting.
What about the accessory children?
Yes, all TAs were included.
Because when I asked you about was accessory children in that number, you said no.
No, ma'am, she said, we asked her and she said, yes, this number included all of our teacher assistants. When she calculated this sheet that she had, when she did the calculations, she included all of them.
How many TAs do you have in the county?
I can't give you that number.
So I'm
We
confused.
talked about
So
it
if
for
we're
2
not
months.
getting all the TAs, but certain TAs.
No, ma'am. When she did this, she used the number to come up with these figures. For example, she had, the cost of teacher assistants per day. So if we added back a day, each day we added back would be $9,161.22. And that would cover adding a day back for every teacher assistant we had in our county, regardless of what fund source they were paid from.
But is there a sum total of all the TAs in the county?
The total that she used to calculate this is not on here.
Okay, see, that's the issue I have. We don't have the sum total of all the TAs, but just the ones she got listed there.
So again, when the board makes a request for information, we take that request and we work with that report. The report's not ready yet. So to circle back on Ms. Vance's question is, yes, we are working on it. We have a budget season coming up.
Okay, don't we have a work session this month?
We do?
And that date is?
21st. All right, anybody else?
So on the 21st, we will be having, all these reports that's been requested.
Well, we have several projects from the board, including more students at the Innovation Campus, analyzing schedules. There's a video request. We have information for teacher assistants.
Well, I think the teacher system are more of a top priority right now because they are constantly asking for some sort of answer.
Sure, absolutely, we agree. And the testimony is tremendous. I mean, if we're not moved by that, I don't know what else we're doing.
So we need to get them an answer and spend some time in this conversation.
I think everybody in the room agrees with you.
Okay, so in our 24th work session, we will have some information discussion on TAs and what it would take for us to kind of help make it to a way that we can make a difference in their lives.
We will bring as much information as we can provide.
Okay, thank you.
All right, with that, meeting is adjourned.